U.S. and Taiwan defense officials warned that China could attack Taiwan as early as next year. Also ahead,
I'm Liao for TaiwanPlus, here outside the capital City Hall, where environmentalists are hoping to put climate change-related issues on the agenda of upcoming local elections.
Liz Truss resigns after just 45 days as British Prime Minister, triggering another political crisis in London. One of Taiwan's biggest art shows kicks off with an emphasis on sustainability. A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Liao. Defense officials from both the U.S. and Taiwan say that China could use force to take over Taiwan as early as next year. With concerns over increased Chinese military presence in the Taiwan Strait, there are calls for Taiwan to enhance its defenses. Jaime reports.
China has been increasing its military pressure in the Taiwan Strait, raising concerns that Beijing might move to attack Taiwan earlier than projected. U.S. officials have originally estimated a potential Chinese invasion of the island nation by 2027, but Admiral Mike Gilday, U.S. Chief of Naval Operations, moved up that time frame in an interview with an American think tank.
In my mind, that has to be a 2022 window or potentially a 2023 window. It's how the Chinese behave and what they do. And what we've seen over the past 20 years is that they have delivered on every promise they've made earlier than they said they were going to deliver on it.
China sees Taiwan as part of its own territory and has not ruled out the use of military force to take the island. At a legislative hearing in Taipei, the country's National Security Bureau Director General, Chen Mingtong, was asked about the U.S. Admiral's comments. Taiwan's foreign ministry also responded to questions about the possibility of an invasion timeline being advanced.
外交部我们对于相关的报道，我们没有细节可以分享，也没有进一步的评论。
But as far as Taiwan's biggest ally is concerned, helping the country protect itself is a priority.
The U.S. is looking at all options on the table to ensure that the rapid transfer of defense capabilities to Taiwan can take place as swiftly as possible.
Taiwan has been under threat of invasion from China for decades, but if and when that will happen has always been under debate. Taiwan's defense minister has said that China could have the capability to seize the island nation as early as 2025, increasing the urgency to bolster the country's defenses.
我们无论如何，就是不管它这个 timetable 是怎么样的状况，那台湾现在就是最优先的，就是要增加刚才您说的 anti-ship 或 air defense 这个防空跟反舰的这些飞弹。
It's clear that the U.S. and Taiwan aim to further defense cooperation, and no matter the timeline, Taiwan's priority will always be to defend its sovereignty. Damon Lin and Jaime for TaiwanPlus.
President Tsai Ing-wen has welcomed Eswatini's King Maswati III to Taiwan on his 18th visit to the country. The king and his entourage received a military salute in front of the presidential office building in Taipei. King Maswati is the first foreign head of state to visit Taiwan since the country scrapped COVID quarantine rules last week. In her welcoming remarks, President Tsai said that bilateral exchanges and cooperation have grown even closer as the two countries supported each other through the COVID pandemic. King Maswati said his country's relations with Taiwan have stood the test of time, and they're still strong 54 years after their establishment. He also said that Eswatini will continue pushing for Taiwan's inclusion in the United Nations.
The longer Taiwan is not allowed to be a member of the UN family, the longer the world is deprived of vital components of global evolution. The United Nations should speak with one voice and recognize that Taiwan has a lot to share with the international community.
It's one of the rituals of Taiwan's election season. With around a month left until polling day, candidates for local elections have drawn lots to decide their position on the ballot. Friday morning saw the three leading candidates in Taipei deciding their numbers. The ruling Democratic Progressive Party candidate Chen Sizong drew number 12. Main opposition Kuomintang nominee Jiang Wan'an drew number 6, while independent candidate Vivian Huang drew number 8. It was a scene that was repeated across the country. The candidates' numbers will be prominently displayed on election materials to make sure voters know where to stamp their ballots. Meanwhile, in other election news, there have been calls for candidates to put a greater focus on the environment. Rick Glauert went to the capital's City Hall, where activists were hoping to put climate change on the political agenda.
It's election season here in Taiwan. In just over a month, people across the country will be going to the polls to vote in local officials, from county chiefs to city mayors. That means politicians are out on the streets and on the front of newspapers doing whatever they can to secure votes. So these environmentalists outside the capital City Hall are putting on a display to remind them of the climate change related issues that really matter to Taiwan's voters.
So far, we don't see any climate policy proposed by the candidates. So it's really a shame because Taiwan is in great danger by climate change. So local government, especially big cities, are the front line to combat climate change.
Greenpeace took an online survey to find out what people care most about, and they displayed the most popular choices outside Taipei city government. Low emission transport zones in cities, net zero social housing, and government-provided reusable food containers were among the most pressing issues. Taiwan has seen unprecedented droughts in the last few years, as well as record-breaking rain in the last week. Many put these down to climate change.
The warming temperature will cause a lot of problems. For example, the energy shortage, energy blackout, and the water demand and water shortage. So the mayor candidates will need to consider more about associated issues, how we respond to heat from multiple aspects, from social welfare and elderly care, and how change our environment to be greener and cooler.
Taiwan is often described as a raucous democracy with one of the highest voter turnouts in the world. November's elections are already dominating local media, with accusations flying between politicians of everything from plagiarizing university theses to money laundering. One candidate is even being urged to drop out of a race over a decades-old murder charge. Many feel that more attention needs to be paid to the real issues affecting the public.
We want the candidates that can help us to build a better future for our next generation, right? So climate change is an issue related to our future. We want a candidate that they see this and a vision for our future, and that's why we focus on the policy instead of politicians.
Perhaps the most closely watched race this year is the Taipei mayorship. It's seen as a stepping stone to the presidency. We will have to wait another month to see who will get the keys to Taipei City Hall and other seats of power around the country. But environmentalists hope it will be the issues and not the politics that will guide those in charge. Alex Chen and Rick Glauert in Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
Not everyone in Taiwan will be able to cast their votes in November's local elections. Under current COVID rules, infected patients are required to isolate even on voting day. This has raised concerns that citizens' right to vote will be violated. But election officials say the rules are in line with the country's constitution.
确诊的哈，这个是因为传染病防治法的规定哈，他必须要接受隔离了哈。那这样子的一个规定呢，其实之前也司法院大法官690号解释呢，也认为说并没有违反这个比例的原则所以这个是很不得已的事情我们还是按照国家的这个防疫的规定来执行。
Tackling violent crime has become a hot topic in Taiwan's capital following a deadly shooting in the city on Wednesday night. And with local elections fast approaching, Taipei City mayoral candidates are weighing in on the issue. Eric Gao reports.
Public safety has raced up the political agenda as campaigning heats up for local elections next month. A gang-related shooting spree in the capital this week has become a stark reminder to politicians of one of the biggest issues that affect voters' lives. The shooter injured 4 people, including a police officer, before killing himself. Taipei mayoral candidates have spoken out about violence in the city and their plans to tackle it. One of the most vocal was Vivian Huang, who until recently was Taipei's deputy mayor and whose duties included supervising the police.
台北市的治安事件到目前为止，重大犯罪事件几乎是100%破案。那当然，这次的不幸的事情，还是警察这边我觉得谴责暴力，然后绝不姑息。
The ruling Democratic Progressive Party's candidate says the mayor is ultimately responsible for the city's response to violent incidents.
市长当然是一个指挥官，那他就会就近成立一个指挥所，那就近去指挥调度。当然也要尊重我们警察的一个专业。
The candidate for the main opposition Kuomintang says more security infrastructure and equipment will help improve the city's safety situation.
我们应该让台北市我们的监视器全面的更新，也希望能够让警方的装备设施能够全面提升，也希望我们的快打部队能够真正的实际发挥更大的功效。
In response to the shooting, Taipei police have launched a crackdown on organized crime. The success of their efforts and the candidate's own law enforcement policies is likely to impact the outcome of the mayoral race on November 26th. Klein Wong and Eric Gao for TaiwanPlus.
Turning now to international news, Liz Truss has resigned as Britain's Prime Minister just 45 days after taking office. Truss will become the shortest-serving British leader in modern history. Her Conservative Party will name a new leader by the end of next week, but some say the political chaos is distracting from pressing domestic issues. James Chater reports.
British politics thrust once more into turmoil. Just 45 days after becoming Britain's Prime Minister, Liz Truss is out.
I cannot deliver the mandate on which I was elected by the Conservative Party. I have therefore spoken to His Majesty the King to notify him that I am resigning as leader of the Conservative Party.
Truss's departure caps a tumultuous 6 weeks in office, which more recently had seen resignations from her finance and interior ministers. And before that, U-turns on controversial economic plans that saw the British pound plunge to record lows against the US dollar.
I am a fighter and not a quitter.
Now, another unwelcome record for Truss, the shortest-serving British Prime Minister in history. Even in the early days of her tenure, there were questions about her ability to lead the country, with one tabloid even putting up a live stream on a lettuce to see who would have a longer shelf life. The lettuce won. The leader of the UK's opposition Labour Party has called for a general election.
We can't have a revolving door of chaos. We can't have another experiment at the top of the Tory party. There is an alternative, and that's a stable Labour government, and the public are entitled to have their say.
But beyond the political theatre is a country facing enormous challenges. Inflation in the UK reached a 40-year high of over 10% this week, as fears of a cost of living crisis mount.
This is just symbolic of a party. It's absolute chaos, and the impact it's had on ordinary working people in this country. You know, seeing our bills go up, seeing our mortgage go up, you know, not linking benefits. You know, so people are really, really suffering in this country, and I think that's the real story here.
Senior Conservative Party officials have outlined an expedited process to select a new leader by the end of next week. There's speculation former Prime Minister Boris Johnson, ousted earlier this year, may make a bid. Truss's successor will be the 5th UK Prime Minister in 6 years, a record that is also calling into question Britain's ability to lead on the global stage. Truss had taken a tough line on China, a position the next Prime Minister is likely to continue. But domestically, more pressing questions remain as to whether whoever replaces Truss will be able to bring stability to both the party and the country. Andy Xue and James Chater for TaiwanPlus.
Japan's finance minister has vowed to take decisive action after the yen sank to the lowest level against the US dollar in 32 years. The yen broke the psychological barrier of 150 against the greenback on Thursday, prompting concerns the country's central bank may be forced to intervene. Despite global inflation leading many central banks to raise interest rates, Japan has been an outlier in choosing not to. Some analysts say that's behind the weakening currency. But with Japan recently reopening to international tourists, officials are hoping the weaker currency will be a draw to visitors from Taiwan and around the world. A prominent economic think tank in Taiwan has downgraded its forecast for the country's GDP growth this year. The Zhonghua Institution for Economic Research cut its 2022 outlook by nearly 0.3 percentage points from its July prediction. It says it revised this year's forecast to 3.28% due to inflation and monetary tightening. The think tank also predicts GDP growth in 2023 will fall to 2.81%, mainly due to the impact of the US-China tech war, which will most likely hit Taiwan's exports. Meanwhile, orders in September to China and Hong Kong recorded their biggest single-month drop since April 2009. Taiwan's economy ministry says this has been spurred by economic weakness both domestically and in end markets, as well as China's zero-COVID policy. Coming up, Taiwan is sending a team to the French city of Marseille to compete in the second FIA Motorsport Games. Details after the break.
Today, 台湾人要了解的是，我们跟这片土地关系里面，它是跟你的生命的根源息息相关。像这个红冠、扁柏等等，他们都是台湾的神明。长期以来，我一直误以为我在抢救山林，直到最近10年来，我才了解，我从来没有抢救山林，而是山林从来在抢救我们。我们的地球46亿年来，我们就是它的一部分，它就是我们共同的灵魂，流传在我的血液中，也流动在树叶当中。
Welcome back. You're watching TaiwanPlus News. The health condition of one of Taiwan's few giant pandas is deteriorating. Taipei Zoo officials say Tuan Tuan has lost all strength in his hind legs and spends most of his time lying down. He has also lost most of his appetite. Tuan Tuan is 18 years old, or about 50 to 60 in human years. He was treated for brain lesions in August and appeared to be recovering well until a few days ago. Vets are continuing to monitor his situation and have not ruled out seeking help from Chinese panda experts. Tuan Tuan was one of a pair given to Taiwan by China in 2008. Divers off Taiwan's southern tip say a coral reef was damaged during Tropical Storm Nisat last weekend. The reef was hit by cement blocks dragged along the sea floor. The blocks had held buoys stationary before rough seas pulled them out of place.
水泥块上面还拉着一条绳子，那我们顺着绳子往上看的时候，发现绳子上面绑着一颗浮球。观察了一下水泥块附近原本很漂亮的软珊瑚跟硬珊瑚都已经被撞烂了，然后都只剩下石头被夷为平地。
Divers say Kunding National Park, which is in charge of the area, should be more careful about protecting its marine resources. The park says it is sending a company to move the blocks back to the sandy seabed they came from. It also says it will shorten the buoy ropes, making it harder for the blocks to be moved again. New software has been developed that can translate Hokkien, one of the most widely spoken languages in Taiwan.
Liao and hello and
the Universal Speech Translator allows speech-to-speech translation, which is key for Hokkien, a language with no standard writing system. Researchers used 30,000 hours of Taiwanese TV dramas to train the language model. Hokkien is a dialect of Southern Chinese that is also spoken in Taiwan and across Southeast Asia. The software was developed by Meta, the parent company of Facebook. The FIA Motorsport Games are back after a 2-year delay caused by the COVID pandemic. Drivers from Taiwan are heading to Marseille in France for this year's event. Yu Jinghuang reports.
The Sports Administration presents a flag to a team of 11 racing drivers who will represent Taiwan at the second FIA Motorsport Games in France. Among them, Evan Chen, a past winner of an international trophy. He's teaming up with his dad, Chen Wenge, for the event in Marseille in the south of France at the end of October.
我相信体能上没有什么问题，现在是在速度上要跟上我儿子，要稍微拼一下。
Team Taiwan will compete in 6 categories, including karting endurance. 4 drivers are teaming up for that event, all with karting experience in Taiwan.
甚至我们把这次比赛用的引擎也直接从爱尔兰空运客过来，就是希望我们可以在赛前就是先了解这台车子的战况如何。
But while the government gave the team a send-off, it doesn't provide any funding for racing. Regulations mean the Chinese Taipei Motorsports Association, which selected the team, is not recognized as a sports organization, so it has to rely on private companies for sponsorship. In some cases, the racers have to pay their way by themselves. Despite this, their spirits are high.
代表国家一定是很荣耀，责任感对我们来说会更重。
But there is hope. The official flag ceremony put on by the Sports Administration is a sign of growing recognition for motorsports in Taiwan. The government also promised to look for ways around the regulations. So maybe in the future, racers representing Taiwan will be celebrated as much as the country's other sports persons. Damon Lin and Eugene Huang for TaiwanPlus.
Team Taiwan has been handed their first loss at the U23 Baseball World Cup. South Korea beat the tournament hosts 6-2 in Taipei. But because Taiwan went undefeated in the opening round, they entered the second stage with 2 wins already on their tally. This means they are still tied for second place in the tournament. Taiwan's next match is against Mexico on Friday night. One of Taiwan's biggest art shows is underway, Art Taipei 2022. This year's event focuses on sustainability. I went to the Taipei World Trade Center to get a first-hand look. One main focus of this year's show is sustainability. As you can see, there's artwork made from tires, botanicals, and rusted iron. The theme of sustainability is not just visible in the artwork. It's also an important factor in how they're running this year's show. They're working with the Gallery Climate Coalition, an organization that helps the art industry cut down on carbon emissions. One example, they're using lights that are specially designed to emit less heat. That means you can cut down on the air conditioning. By noon, a sizable crowd has filled the hall. Some people are looking to buy, but many are here to support artists.
我今天是想要来看一个艺术家叫 Fanco， 然后他是一个画狗仔的，因为我身上有他的刺青，所以想要来看他的画作本人这样。
我是来看那个梦里那兔的展览这样。对，因为他去年也是有来这边展览，所以我们今年就是只要梦兔他有办展览的时候，我们都会过来支持这样。
In addition to art exhibits, there are also guided tours, lectures, and roundtable discussions. Whether you're buying, looking, or here to learn, there's a little something for everyone. One of Taiwan's biggest annual design events is wrapping up this weekend. The Taiwan Design Expo is being held this year in the southern city of Kaohsiung, highlighting the works of over 500 local designers. This year's event was the biggest in the Expo's history and drew big crowds. Visitor numbers peaked at 1.3 million during last week's National Day-long weekend. It can be hard to make your mark in a foreign country, and especially so if you're a young artist. But one illustrator who moved to Taiwan from Hong Kong is finally realizing her dream of opening a store to sell her items of her own design. This is how she got there.
我在2016年9月一个人来到台湾环岛旅行，本来只是打算待3个月，但没想到一直就留到现在了。小时候就很喜欢看台湾的节目，然后就想我毕业之后，我第一个要去旅行的地方就是台湾。第一次跟我朋友来了台北，玩了5天。毕业之后存了2万块港币，就一个人来环岛。我来台湾环岛之前，有在 Facebook 上面做网络插画，开始会有出版社来找你出书，所以我那时候就出了一个叫《香港手作小旅行》的书。我环岛去住了一间青年旅馆，认识了一对夫妻。大概3个月之后，我要回去，很想留在台湾。刚好他邀请我合作，然后我就留在北门开了一间店。我刚开始开店的时候，我的家人都很反对，生意最差1个月就真的只有3000块营业额。 在我顾店这段期间，我也开始了一些小小的品牌，然后也有出去寄卖，然后开始讲到原来文创要怎么做。小时候就会觉得台湾最大的文创书店就是诚品。我品牌其实刚做几个月，就去参加那一届的少年头家，就蛮幸运的。因为那个时候我做文创，我最终目标我就是要上架成品。我跟人家合作开店，虽然最后是2年多之后就结束了，但是我也没有觉得我创业失败了。因为我在中间的过程其实学到蛮多的，从中间观察到不同国家客人会喜欢买什么东西。前面有这2年多开店的经验，所以蛮幸运，就一刚开始就稳定的成长。我们就决定在永康街去开一间真正属于自己的店面。我的品牌给客人的印象，对东西都是小小的，这些东西对我来说是有感情的，所以我也希望我的设计，客人是会对它有一个不一样的感情，是你看到这些图案会想到你的朋友。因为我自己有一个习惯，就是每天我都要去想新的东西，我有什么新的想法，我都要把它做出来。基本上生活就是每天都在工作。但是我也去享受这一个工作，它是工作，但是也是我的生活。
Thank you for watching TaiwanPlus News. I'm Liao. Take care and see you next time.